Hello, everyone, and many thanks for joining this stream. And of course, many thanks to all the members of our community that will either join later on or will watch your video after the stream, or will watch short clips that I will make from this stream during the day. Today is 10th of June. Now it's 11 o'clock in the morning, Moscow time, and because there was no questions, or the comments that I can highlight through support platforms, PayPal, Boosty, and the rest. I will start straight away with the news without further delay. So let's go through some news, dear friends. There are a lot of important developments, and I will start with this report from RIA Novosti that overnight, early hours of this morning, according to Russian Defense Ministry's briefing, 102 Ukrainian drones were intercepted by Russian air defense systems on duty over 11 regions. I can give you some more precise information. 46 drones were intercepted over the territory of Bryansk region, 20 drones over the Belgorod region, 9 drones each over the Voronezh region and Crimea, 4 drones each over the Kaluga region and the Tatarstan Autonomous Republic, 3 drones over the Moscow region, 2 drones each over the Leningrad region, Oryol region and the Kursk region, and 1 drone over the Smolensk region. Relatively large-scale attempt of Kiev regime and its NATO backers to strike deep into Russian territory. Vast majority of drones were intercepted based on this report. Meanwhile, obviously, Russian armed forces also conducting long-range precise strikes on enemy, on military and logistical infrastructure of the Western-backed terrorist regime of Zelensky. And this morning, I did share on my Telegram and Twitter X page some of the images of the aftermath of Russian drone and missile strikes in Kiev and the Kiev region. You can check out videos, by the way, on my Telegram or Twitter X page. Main direction of Russian strike this time was exactly the Kiev region and Kiev itself. Until now, based on reports from a number of sources, local authorities are trying to put out fire in as a result of these strikes in Kiev, for example. And one of the sources reported that one of the buildings that was struck by Russian side was a building that was used by UK at some point. I will add UK's secret services. So maybe there was still some presence of a personnel of British secret services in that building, because this strike was conducted for a reason, right? Although the defense ministry did not yet provided some specifics about these strikes, and during the day we will probably learn some more about it, and I will share additional information on my Telegram and Twitter X page in the next updates. Also, when it comes to strikes on Kiev-controlled territory and work of local air defense systems, it is highly likely, I think, that one of the targets of Russian strike last night, early hours of this morning, potentially was Patriot air defense systems, some of which potentially was provided to this Nazi regime in Kiev by Israel. And well, Israeli ambassador, for example, Israeli ambassador in Ukraine, Mikhail Brodsky, admitted in an interview, televised interview, that Israel sent the Patriot systems to bolster Ukraine's air defense. When they say, and this is quote, by the way, from his statements, when they say Israel did not help militarily, this is not true, according to Brodsky. And he then went to acknowledge that Patriot air defense systems was sent from Israel, which is very unfortunate, obviously. And it's not just air defense systems, by the way. Israeli secret services are involved in this proxy war against Russia big time, and I think time will come. Time will come for retributions for this criminal activity, for Israel also, and every other enemy of Russia, not just Israel, but every other enemy. And Israel is, of course, enemy, and same goes for US, UK, France, Germany, and basically collective West in general. Maybe with the exception of a country or two that are still acts adequately, but unfortunately this is an exception, not the rule. And of course, I'm talking about political. While mentioning enemies, I'm talking about political class and the states. In no circumstances I will ever talk in such a manner in regards to ordinary people from whichever country, by the way. Even if I'm quite sure that vast majority of societies in collectivist countries are zombified by this time with extreme Russophobia, extreme anti-Russian propaganda of their so-called elites. But still, ordinary people is ordinary people. I consider as enemies of Russia, and enemies of Russians, Western so-called elites, globalists, neocons, and the regimes that they control worldwide, mainly in the collective West. Although there are other countries too that's still controlled by them. And we also received, dear friends, additional information about yesterday's strikes that Russian armed forces conducted on military and logistical infrastructure of the Kiev regime. I reported there that during the yesterday's strikes, one of the main targets was airfield in a Rovno region, which was used by NATO and the Kiev regime to store missiles, according to reports that I see on Russian segment of internet, to store missiles, long-range cruise missiles like British Storm Shadow, French Scalp PG, and potentially, this is not officially confirmed, but potentially maybe even German Taurus missiles. And also, according to reports, number of planes were also deployed in that airfield, and the Kiev regime suffered some significant losses in terms of military equipment, planes, and also significant volume of these missiles that NATO provided for deep strike into Russia were destroyed. So, and if you take into account how powerful this strike was, one may argue that airfield and all the infrastructure, including underground storage facilities, were incinerated. And I have reason to say so because at some point, after main volley of missiles and drones hit the target, after that, Russian Air Force launched Kinzhal hypersonic missiles also. In addition, just to make sure that everything that was targeted was destroyed completely. So it was definitely significant success on Russian side. Meanwhile, we have this report that yesterday POW exchange took place between Moscow and Kiev. The first group of soldiers under 25-year-old was returned from Ukrainian captivity to Russia. First, they went to Belarus, and then from Belarus to Russia. And what is information itself is, of course, positive. And this exchange of POWs was done according to agreements that was reached in Istanbul during the recent second round of direct talks between Moscow and Kiev. But what is also interesting, first time, if I'm not mistaken, information was not provided about number of POWs that was released by each side. Russian media outlets only reported, based on Russian Defense Ministry, that from Russian captivity were freed same number of Ukrainian POWs. And this was just the first stage. Overall, according to if this process continues according to Istanbul agreements, overall both sides will release at least 1,000 POWs, among them not just military personnel that is under 25 years, but also military personnel in captivity that is ill, seriously ill, in critical condition. So yet again, something positive in terms of humanitarian contacts between the sides. And well, on the topic of exchange of POWs, well, as I reported previously, and many of you, of course, know, dear friends, that for a second week now, Russia is offering Kiev regime to transfer bodies of killed Ukrainian military personnel, 6,000 bodies to be more precise, of their soldiers and their officers that were identified by Russian side. All the DNA tests were conducted and all their information was gathered that is necessary in such cases. And the Kiev regime, as you know, dear friends, and as I predicted, and there are many other commentators, Kiev regime is refusing still until now to accept this their own military personnel, basically, to transfer them to families so that they will bury them based on their traditions, religious traditions, and so on. And Politico come up, and in recent updates, dear friends, I did explain my take why Kiev regime is refusing to accept this transfer. It's a do I have to repeat her? I mean, it's several key points there that needs to be highlighted. For example, first is, of course, that this transfer of 6,000 bodies of killed Ukrainian military personnel will derail big time narrative that was pushed by Kiev regime and its NATO backers that since the beginning of special military operation, they only lost like 40, 50,000 troops. That's the first thing. Secondly, Kiev regime don't want to pay compensations for families of their deceased military personnel, and therefore quite often bodies of killed Ukrainian military personnel is not evacuated from the battlefield, even if Russian side is offering such a opportunity. And there are, in many cases, killed military personnel designated as missing in action or as deserters. So that way, Kiev regime is avoiding paying compensations to their families of this military personnel. Well, Politico, pay attention, surprisingly, I will say, pay attention to these developments and come up with the information that Russian side can, in addition to the 6,000 killed, in addition to bodies of the 6,000 killed military personnel of Kiev regime, can also transfer 40,000 more bodies of Ukrainian soldiers and their officers. And well, Politico, being Western propaganda outlet, is taking its, tries to push its own narrative that this is Russia's attack on Ukraine's economy. They don't see humanitarian aspect of it. I mean, usual stuff there. But, and I don't know how reliable this report of Politico is, but in any case, obviously there is a financial weight also on the Kiev regime if this information is correct and if Russia is really ready and can transfer another 40,000 bodies of the Kiev regime forces, troops, because overall, in that case, Kiev regime, if they accept 6,000 killed, bodies of 6,000 killed military personnel, they have to pay around $2.2, $2.3 billion as a compensations to the families of this military personnel. Then if 40,000 more bodies are transferred to Kiev regime, then this number will go up to 20 billion potentially, if not more. And definitely Zelensky and his criminal associates are not the people that would want to offer any compensation to the families of these people, and neither their Western backers want to do so. This is a big topic, dear friends. This is a big topic, and the Russian side is publishing names of the killed Ukrainian soldiers and the officers that Moscow is ready to transfer to Kiev regime, and their relatives can check these lists. They can look at their relatives that were designated as missing in action or the deserters, and if they find their loved ones, potentially, I'm not sure about, but potentially they might try to reach Russian side, and maybe in terms of humanitarian humanitarian action, Russia will agree to transfer directly to the families these bodies, although officially there was no statement made about it, and it does looks like Kyiv regime has no intention to actually accept this transfer. So let's see how will situation develop in this regards. Moscow might wait another week, let's say, towards the end of this week or maybe even next week, and at some point, probably, Russian militaries, Russian leadership will say, I mean, we tried, they refused, so therefore we just have to bury now this military personnel, and that's it. And when it comes to inhuman terrorist Zelensky, well, interesting news is coming from former Prime Minister of Ukraine, Nikolai Azarov, who is predicting that Zelensky will flee Ukraine, and in a short time. This person, Nikolai Azarov, was a prime minister of Ukraine, has a lot of contacts inside of Ukraine and outside of Ukraine, due to his position and influence at the time and potentially now. So therefore, I think it's worth to pay attention to his statements. So let's go through some details here. So Vladimir Zelensky will resign and leave Ukraine. Former Prime Minister of Ukraine, Nikolai Azarov, has predicted, citing what he describes as a US-backed effort to remove their country's leader, so-called leader. In a post on Telegram on Sunday, Azarov suggested that their decision to remove Zelensky from power has already been made in the US, and that Washington has given their go-ahead for his ouster. He wrote that although the Ukrainian leader has support in Europe, it is unlikely to change anything and will hardly help him. Azarov, who served as a prime minister of Ukraine under ousted President Viktor Yanukovych, predicted that Zelensky would eventually step down, given that his mandate officially expired last year. He would then will be replaced by parliamentary speaker Ruslan Stefanchuk, who would serve as acting president and began shaping a new political landscape in Ukraine. And we have a quote from Azarov: I don't think Zelensky will remain in Ukraine after this. He will request protection, most likely from special services, but they will not make such sacrifices for him. The option for his future may be dark, let's say. And the question is, if information of Azarov is correct, question is where Zelensky might go, in which direction he might flee. And I said many times before, isn't it, that in my personal opinion, he will flee for Israel, and he will ask protection, a local regime there in Israel, and probably will receive such a protection, because whenever there is a talks about future of Zelensky or his fate, I always remember statements of former Prime Minister of Israel. I cannot remember his name now, but he served quite short time. But at one point he stated that during his talks with the Russian President Vladimir Putin, he received guarantees that Moscow will take no action personally against Zelensky. And because Israeli Prime Minister was that interested in the fate of Zelensky, that gives me a ground to say that probably already there have been some agreements in place, and Israel probably already had promised protection to this war criminal and mass murderer and terrorist. Zelensky. So if he will manage to escape Ukraine alive, which is in question, by the way, which is not the fact, right? Because after recent attacks on Russian nuclear triad, Moscow may actually designate Kiev regime as a terrorist organization, and in that case, leadership of this terrorist organization can be definitely eliminated, right? Russian military secret services might receive green light to take action against leadership of this terrorist organization, and therefore, I wouldn't be that sure that Zelensky will manage to escape Ukraine alive, but who knows? Who knows? He's not gonna go in Europe. They don't. No one needs him there. They will use him as long as they can, and right now in Ukraine, but they don't want him in Europe, and hardly US wants to see Zelensky on their territory, right? So Israel is seems like only option that he might have. Yet again, if he will manage to escape alive. TASS news agency, meanwhile, is reporting that Russian forces liberated over 150 settlements since the beginning of 2025. So much for a so-called stalemate, isn't it? That Western propaganda is talking about day in, day out. 150 settlements, by the way, have been big and small cities and towns and villages have been liberated by Russian forces just since the beginning of 2025, and more to come, by the way, because Russian armed forces advancing all along the front line, right? And literally on daily basis, we are receiving reports about more and more settlements being liberated. Also, interesting news from RT that Kremlin names reason for new offensive inside Ukraine. I reported, dear friends, several times in previous days that Russian armed forces advancing now in Dnipropetrovsk region also. And even though not that many media outlets in the West pay any attention to these developments, obviously Russian media is interested in a topic, and the press spokesman of the Russian president, Dmitry Peskov, was asked about it, and I give you his response. Russia's recent advance into Ukraine's Dnipropetrovsk region is a part of the push by Moscow to establish a buffer zone on the front line. This is official position of Kremlin, and understandable one. Russian president stated quite a number of times that due to terrorist activity of the regime, Russia has no option but to create a buffer zone. And I remind you, dear friends, that and process is underway, isn't it? Process is underway. Russian troops are advancing in Sumy region big time, now in the Dnipropetrovsk region, also in the Kharkov region, by the way. Soon Kupiansk probably in Kharkov region will be in operational encirclement, and after that it will not take too longer before that city is liberated. And Russian troops are advancing in many directions, right? And I remember a couple of weeks ago, former Russian president and current deputy chairman of the Security Council, Dmitry Medvedev, stated that if Kiev regime and its Western backers would not accept Russian terms now for a long and sustainable truce and ceasefire and peace, then this buffer zone might extend to the borders of the Western Ukraine. Something to think about, I guess, right? And I myself also said there so many times, isn't it, that in my personal take, once this conflict will end there, and in the process, Ukraine will definitely face the full-scale disintegration. And I think Western Ukraine eventually will end up under NATO control, because NATO member states like Poland, Hungary, Romania, potentially even Bulgaria and Slovakia will have some claims on the parts of Western Ukraine, while the rest of the territory of this former Soviet Republic will be in Russian zone of influence. Number of regions probably will join Russian Federation, if not all of it. But still, there is a little chance, I think, that Kiev and their surrounding couple of regions might remain on the political map as a state in the zone of Russian influence, completely free of the West, right? But yet again, longer this conflict continues, chances that Ukraine as a state will survive is getting closer and closer to the zero. Also, something to take in account. And to continue, dear friends, RIA Novosti is reporting that even though not that many media outlets in the West did pay any attention at all to the Russian advances in the Dnipropetrovsk region, there is an exception, and British Times newspaper actually reported about it, and I give you their take on the situation. So the offensive of the Russian troops in the Dnipropetrovsk region will be a serious blow to Ukraine. British Times is writing. I mean, what a genius these people are. Their entry of the Russian armed forces into this region would be a significant symbolic and strategic blow for Ukraine, publication said. And earlier, as I already said, dear friends, I have reported that fighters of the Sun group of forces of the Russian army reached the western borders of their DPR and continued their offensive inside the Dnipropetrovsk region. I can show you on the map exact area where a border of the Dnipropetrovsk region was breached, and this is this, by the way. South Donetsk sector. From South Donetsk sector, Russian troops entered the Dnipropetrovsk region and are preparing ground, I will say, for offensive operations towards Kiev regime's forces in Novopavlovka settlement. And same time, dear friends, if you take a look at the map, this red line is a border with the Dnipropetrovsk region, and you can clearly see that Russian troops in many sectors are right next to it. So soon there will be more and more areas where Russian troops will enter the Dnipropetrovsk region. It's inevitable. I predicted that this will happen, and it did happen, right? So yeah, even though this British media outlet Times didn't demonstrate there any much intellect, at least they acknowledged progress of the Russian armed forces, right? While other media outlets, majority of the media outlets in the West, completely ignore this. But Times did write something, nothing extraordinary, but at least they acknowledge the fact. RIA Novosti, meanwhile, is reporting that, head of Russian delegation in talks with the Kiev regime, Medinsky made a very significant statement, in my opinion. He said that freezing of the conflict in Ukraine will lead to a nuclear war. And I mean, statement cannot go any more serious than that, isn't it? So let me give you some details. Freezing the conflict in Ukraine without agreements on a real peace will lead to a nuclear war, presidential aide Vladimir Medinsky said on RT. And few key points from his statements. The terms of the peace treaty in 2022 for Ukraine were softer than those that Russia is offering Kiev today, which is true, by the way. And as I said, the longer this conflict continues, more harsh Russian terms are gonna be. It's just you don't have to be genius to understand that, isn't it? At the time in 2022, Russia demanded Ukraine's refusal to join NATO, the Orthodox Church, and the Russian language in Ukraine to be treated equal with the Ukrainian language, recognition of the results of the referendum in Crimea, to leave alone the two regions of Donbass that do not want to live as a part of Ukraine. That was 2022, by the way, March, April, when there was negotiations in Istanbul, initially in Belarus, then in Istanbul, and even some preliminary agreements were reached, isn't it? But then, after that, Well, globalists get involved there. They send their proxies, their puppets, basically, from UK, Boris Johnson, from US. Nuland was sent there, I believe. Also, some officials from high-ranking officials from CIA, and they derailed these talks between Moscow and Kiev. We all remember that. And now, if Ukraine, and Medinsky continues, if Ukraine wanted the peace and made decision on its own, the peace treaty with Moscow would have been signed on February 28, 2022. And we have a quote from him. We finally came to an agreement their first time in Istanbul. We prepared their treaty. I remember it as if it was yesterday. 19 pages, very detailed. There were even such nuances so that the words would not be understood. Their words would be understood the same way in Russian, English, and Ukrainian. And it does matter, by the way. Sometimes translation of the text, same text, in different languages can be read very differently. And even these nuances were taken in account while the Russian side was preparing this agreement. On April 15, President Putin looked at this treaty and made one or two corrections. He is a professional lawyer, Medinsky said. And he also continued, Zelensky was silent for 2 weeks after receiving the agreement that was discussed in 2022. Boris Johnson and people from Joe Biden came to see him. Ukrainians in 22 said that their foreign partners were against concluding an agreement that was then agreed upon with the Russian side. As I said, dear friends, globalists send their puppets and derail this agreement. In their eyes of Ukrainian armed forces soldiers who were in Istanbul, there was a clear reluctance to fight and send soldiers to their death. Moscow offered Ukraine in return to hand over their bodies of Russian soldiers. If there are any, apparently they have nothing to return. He said this on current developments. As I already mentioned, dear friends, Russian side is ready to transfer to Kyiv regime 6,000 bodies of killed Ukrainian military personnel, and is ready to receive bodies of killed Russian military personnel if Kyiv regime can transfer. But for now, no movement in this direction is happening. Medinsky also said Russia does not need a war at all. It is necessary for the current leadership of Ukraine, which is also true. Kyiv regime and its mainly its Western backers, by the way, globalists, they want this war because they still believe that they can achieve this so-called strategic defeat of Russia. And as long as they can sacrifice anybody on Kyiv-controlled territory and throw people into trenches, well, they will continue to do so, most likely. The Ukrainian delegation in 2022 at their negotiations looked more independent and free than this year, which is quite understandable. Globalists have a strong grip on Kyiv regime, 100%. Plus, they've become very nervous and they are constantly looking at each other. It feels like they are watching each other. They don't trust each other, by the way. This is also a good observation from Medinsky. Kyiv regimes, elements in Kyiv regime, by the way, they're constantly looking after their back because they never know which one of them will be taken out by globalists for whatever reasons, right? So they cannot trust nobody, literally. The problem with the peace process is that Europe does not allow Kyiv to reach favorable agreements. Also true, it is possible to quickly reach an agreement on acceptable terms if the negotiations from Kyiv are guided by the interests of Ukraine and not Europe. And by saying Europe, I think Medinsky means globalists, obviously, and globalist puppet regimes in Europe, UK, first of all, France also, Germany, and the rest. The rare agreement with Ukraine is nothing compared to what American business could get through partnership with Moscow. Medinsky also said, which is true, factual, obviously, Russia is uncomparably much more rich country in natural resources than Ukraine or vast majority of the countries in this world, for that matter. Trump's policies are understandable to Russia. He is guided by the national interests of the United States. Well, I mean, I find it difficult to understand why Russian leadership is this soft towards Trump's administration. Maybe my understanding is mistaken, but I think Russian leadership is quite soft in regards to Trump's administration, while they are quite tough on globalist puppet regimes in Europe. And this is happening while just recently US orchestrated attacks on Russian nuclear triad. And in no circumstances I'm going to believe, by the way, that US administration, I mean, Trump himself personally, people in his administration, or the CIA was not involved in any way, shape, or form in this attack on Russian nuclear triad. Without CIA, by the way, without Washington, London makes no steps, right? At least that was the case until now. And what has changed, really? So why should I believe that this attack on Russian nuclear triad that happened a week ago, approximately, 10 days ago, was orchestrated UK only, and US was not involved in that? Is it even possible on theoretical level that CIA did not know what was going on? I don't think so. And therefore, I find it very difficult to understand why this softness towards US administration, man. They are enemies of ours, right? Clearly, and US has to pay. UK has to pay for crimes that they committed, and US has to pay, and every other enemy. But anyways, I mean, it's not me decision maker, isn't it? Other people are, and I just find it difficult to understand why they've been this soft towards the US administration, at least for now. But well, this is the statements of Medinsky, by the way, and he is not just the aide of Russian president, but also, as already pointed out, he is the head of Russian delegation, Russian negotiation team with the Kyiv regime. So his statements definitely matter, I will say. And to continue, dear friends, I already mentioned that well, there are plenty of enemies of Russia out there, mainly, namely collective Western countries, of course. And one of the points on this in this world where our enemies are escalating is the Baltic Sea, right? And I think, and many other people will agree with me, I guess that Baltic Sea can be the point when we will see first direct clashes between Russian and their NATO militaries. Not necessarily a Ukraine, but Baltic Sea. Although it might happen in Ukraine too, but Baltic Sea is definitely resembles right now, to me at least, with their explosive that is ready to go off. That's how tense situation there is. And Russia is preparing. And this morning I shared their information with on my Telegram and Twitter X page with community that Russia's major flex is taking place in the Baltics. Northern Fleet frigate Admiral Kasatonov launched hypersonic Zircon missiles during the drills. Also, Baltic Fleet simulated the strikes on enemy vessels. Anti-terror teams were conducting training to free captured vessels. Also, Air Force of Baltic Fleet and Air Force that is located in Kaliningrad region and the Leningrad region conducted their operations to train in air-to-air combat and also to take out enemy vessels. So quite a large-scale drills, military drills, are taking place in the Baltics, in which not just Baltic Fleet is involved, but also number of vessels from Northern Sea Fleet, and well, this should be the warning. This should be the warning for globalists and their puppet regimes in Europe that well, Moscow is ready. We see enemy activity. We see that they are escalating, and we are ready to take action whenever it's necessary. I think important news. Excuse me. And when it comes to Russian enemies, by the way, obviously UK is up there, on top, right, together with US. And I'm talking about obviously political leadership, local elites there, and so on. And for example, and I think I'm not alone on this regards. Vast majority of my fellow citizens probably are on the same page with me, and maybe Lavrov also, foreign minister of the Russian Federation, because he stated that UK is 100% helping Ukraine to stage terrorist acts against Russia. And this is foreign minister of Russian Federation is saying. So there is no doubt that Britain is helping Ukraine to carry out terrorist attacks inside the Russia. Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov has stated there have been several sabotage incidents on Russian railways since the start of the month. The worst occurred on June 1st when a bridge collapsed in front of their moving passenger train in the Bryansk region, killing 7 people and injuring more than 100. The same day, Ukraine targeted Russian air bases across the country from Murmansk in the Arctic to Irkutsk in Siberia in a coordinated assault which involved explosive loaded drones taking off from commercial trucks. According to Moscow, most of their incoming routes were shut down and none of the affected Russian planes were damaged beyond repair. Well, this is a very optimistic claim, by the way, unfortunately, based on, yet again, I'm not military expert, but based on videos and photos that I see, some planes were damaged beyond repair. I think there was almost nothing left from some planes. So unfortunately, this had happened. And Moscow is quite clearly pointing finger at UK. That this country, United Kingdom, is 100% involved in terrorist activity that formerly Kiev regime is conducting on the Russian territory, and this is a big deal. But to continue, dear friends, speaking during the forum of the Future 2050 in Moscow on Monday, Lavrov acknowledged that the risk of the rise in the level of terrorist threats exists in Russia. It is obvious that all this is being done by the Ukrainian side, but it would have been helpless without the support from the British, he said. Such activities were previously backed by both the US and UK, but now we would have to do solely with the British, Lavrov claimed. And yet again, dear friends, you see, top Russian diplomat is disengaging kind of US from involvement in these terrorist attacks on the Russian Federation, which indicates softening of the Russian position towards the US. I don't like it, absolutely. I think this approach further encourages US leadership, US state institutions, including terrorist organizations like CIA, for example, to conduct more terrorist attacks on Russian territory. But I guess it will take maybe another week or 2 months, and rhetoric on part of Russian leadership going to change. Probably they still hope that they might reach some agreement with Trump's administration, and they are so wrong on that, by the way. They are so wrong on that. Trump's administration and Trump himself is 110% controlled, completely controlled by neocons and the Zionists, by the way. And they are allies of globalists. So I truly struggle to understand why anybody in Russian leadership would think that they can find common ground with current administration in US, especially after recent terrorist attacks on Russian Federation that clearly was orchestrated by the CIA, right? By CIA, US CIA, British MI6, maybe with involvement of some other secret services from, I don't know, France, Germany, potentially, right? I don't know, but this is the situation. I think give it another month, and stance of Russian leadership gonna become much more stronger in regards to Washington also. But UK, well, UK is, as I said, out there. Many Russian high-ranking officials are pointing finger at London for all the terrorist and criminal activity against Russia. And this is serious. This is serious, I think, because in no circumstances, in my understanding, Moscow can ignore attack on its nuclear triad. It's just impossible, right? Humanly impossible. It would be extremely irresponsible to ignore attack on your nuclear triad, right? And that's exactly what US and UK did. And if you notice, Russian president is silent about this, right? Russian president did not even once commented these attacks on Russian nuclear triad yet. And this silence should be extremely worrying for, I think, both US and UK, especially for UK. Because as far as I can tell, monitoring policies and steps of the Russian president for so long, by the way. Maybe I'm 3 years, in the last 3 years, doing these videos on the channel, but obviously I'm monitoring news constantly. I mean, I'm in journalism since, I don't know, 17 years. It's more than 3 decades now. And based on my understanding, silence of Putin is very serious stuff. He will wait now until investigation will come up with their final conclusions, until our investigative committee will share its conclusions with the president, until military investigators will share their conclusion, until our foreign intelligence service will do the same, and also FSB, Federal Security Service. And obviously this conclusion is going to be that this terrorist attacks was conducted with the direct involvement of UK, for sure, 100%, as Lavrov said already, and potentially with the involvement of US secret services, even if Trump himself, for example, was not informed about it, but engaged. I mean, CIA was engaged in that 100%, by the way. And once Russian president will receive all the data from these institutions here in Russia, he will greenlight whatever operations needs to be done to restore nuclear deterrent, because that's what happened, by the way. Russia's nuclear deterrent was breached. And now, whomever was engaged in this attack, they have to pay. They have to pay heavily, so that everyone in this world would understand that nuclear triad of Russia is untouchable. That's it, period, untouchable. So therefore, Russia's answer is going to be something of extraordinary, for sure. Direct or indirect, retaliation will be extremely serious. Extremely. That's how it's gonna be, man. Right? And better, and Russian enemy should prepare for that. You know, they can pray. You know, that might help. I don't know. Meanwhile, when it comes to Western terrorism and Ukrainian terrorism, well, I have this information to share with you, dear friends, that world leaders being added to Ukraine's so-called peacemaker key list, a database targeting those seen as a threat to national security of Ukraine. And this peacemaker platform is runs under umbrella of secret services, so-called secret services of Ukraine, and that is secret services of CIA, US, CIA, and UK MI6. So basically, one may argue that US and UK are directly threatening not just Ukrainian terrorists and the Nazis, but also US and British secret services are directly threatening to Slovakia's Prime Minister Roberto Fico, who was put in that kill list. And he was already attacked, by the way, a couple of times. And once he almost died, right? He received 5, I believe, gunshots and miraculously survived. Also, on this kill list, Ukrainian and US and British kill list is Brazil's president, Lula da Silva, and also leader of Republika Srpska in Bosnia and Herzegovina, Dodik. Right? 3 more people being added to this kill list by Ukrainian Nazis and the terrorists and their CIA and MI6 backers. That's the face of the West, by the way, right now. That's the face, real face of the West, Western ruling class, Western elites. They have kill lists of the people that they don't like. You know, how far they're gonna degenerate, man. I mean, is there even possibility to go any further than that, any below than that? I don't know, but level of degeneration of Western so-called elites is just beyond their imagination. That's for sure. And well, when it comes to statements of Foreign Minister of Russian Federation Lavrov, he also suggested kind of to move UN's headquarters from New York, from out of US basically, which is definitely not going to happen anytime soon. But idea itself is that's definitely relevant because first of all, US didn't deserve to host a UN due to its terrorist activity worldwide and criminal activity worldwide. And secondly, US leadership, time and again, creating barriers for official delegations of EU member states to go to New York and participate in the work of United Nations. Even Russian diplomats, by the way, many times Russian delegations were struggling to acquire visas. So Washington quite effectively weaponized presence of headquarters of UN in New York, which is unacceptable, obviously. And I guess while this divide between collective West and the rest of the world will only accelerate, and at some point, obviously, collective West will end up completely isolated, right, on its own. Topic of either moving UN headquarters to other parts of this world, or to create alternative to it, will become more and more relevant, for sure. But for now, let's go through this news here. United Nations headquarters should be moved from New York to the Russian Black Sea city of Sochi. Foreign Minister of the Russian Federation, Sergei Lavrov, has suggested the UN headquarters, the seat of both the Security Council and the General Assembly, have been in Midtown Manhattan since 1951, having been moved there not long after the organization's founding in 1945. The best thing would be to move the UN to Sochi, Lavrov said at the Forum of the Future 2050 in Moscow on Monday. Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, and this is quote, by the way, from Lavrov's statement, Soviet leader Joseph Stalin, by the way, suggested this and seriously suggested it. But then he yelled to US President Franklin Roosevelt, first Long Island, then New York, Manhattan. Their foreign minister said. He acknowledged, however, that the change would be extremely difficult to make, as these structures have grown deep roots. All these structures, international organizations, have grown deep roots, both in terms of real estate and in terms of personnel, Lavrov said, especially after permanent contracts were introduced. The personnel brought apartments, houses, and basically moved to live in New York. And the sudden shift would be scary to even imagine, according to Lavrov, but topic itself is definitely relevant, and I think it is possibility that in next 10 to 20 years UN headquarters will be moved from New York, because yet again US didn't deserve to host this international organization, and secondly, the US has weaponized presence of this headquarters in New York against their delegations from member states, right? Which is wrong in so many levels that, I mean, I don't think if anyone will even argue seriously that this has to be done. It will be difficult, it will take time, but this has to be done, by the way, 100%, because US not going to change, by the way, not now, not in the 10 years, not in the 20 years or 50 years. Unfortunately, citizens of US have not even a slight chance to reclaim their country. I mean, neocons, deep states, and whatever other influential, I mean, military-industrial complex and whatever other, influential forces are running the show there, they are in such a control that they will never, ever allow US citizens to truly reclaim their country and start making decisions about their future and the future of their country. That's how it is, man. So US will never change until it will collapse under its own weight. And it is already collapsing in some sense, right? And that process is simply unstoppable. Our team, meanwhile, is reporting that, Trump, on the very topic of collapsing US, Trump demands now apology from LA officials. So US President Donald Trump has called on Californian Governor Gavin Newsom and Los Angeles Mayor Karen Bass to apologize for what he described as a horrible failure to control violent unrest in the city. Of course, they're not going to apologize, by the way. Riots in Los Angeles continues, or peaceful protests, as some love to call whatever is happening there. And, Gavin Newsom has actually responded to Trump, and his response is that he decided to sue Trump. Yes, that's it, man. So Californian Governor Gavin Newsom will sue US President Donald Trump over sending the National Guard to Los Angeles to suppress protests. This is exactly what Donald Trump wanted. He started the fire and then illegally tried to federalize the National Guard. The order he's signed is not just for California. It will give him the ability to go into any state and do the same thing. We are suing him, he wrote on social media X. X. And well, let's see what Kurt gonna say about decisions of the Trump. But Trump, U.S. president himself, is backing border czar Homan, who stated that he might actually go ahead and arrest California's governor. Trump was asked about it, and he said, I would do it. He is a nice guy, but grossly incompetent, according to Trump. And he was talking about Newsom. So I don't know. Maybe if things go wild, even wilder, it is wild already. But if things further deteriorate, who knows? Maybe U.S. Law enforcement agencies gonna go ahead and actually arrest some high-ranking figures in California. Who knows? But dear friends, also there are reports, isn't it? Reports are coming in that maybe this current unrest in California is just the first stage of a pre-planned operation of certain forces in US. And if that is the case, then somewhat similar activities might begin happening in other states of US, especially ones that are run by Democrats. And also, as I already said, by the way, I think there is some serious finances behind this whole development. Certain groups that I see on videos, by the way, are quite well organized, and I have seen such organized groups or activities from the countries where these so-called color revolutions were taking place. So who knows, maybe what we are seeing now in California is just the first step in a wider operation to oust Trump. I mean, I don't know. These technologies of color revolution is well known to very influential groups in US, right? Ask Soros, for example, and members of his organization. They know perfectly well how to organize color revolutions. Same can be said about deep state of US and CIA, obviously. So if they are collaborating to oust these America First people from government, then we should expect further deterioration of the situation, not just in California, but in other states also. And I guess Washington also sees such a threat. And therefore, in addition to National Guard, U.S. Defense Secretary Pat Hexet, for example, stated that 700 Marines from the Camp Rendleton military base will be sent to Los Angeles to protect their federal resources. So it's Marines also being deployed now, and I already see this morning some videos of deployment of Marines, their vehicles and the personnel. So clearly, Washington is taking some steps to prevent further enlargement of these processes that for now might engulf other cities in California, San Francisco, for example, some others, and then move into other states too. So we will see. If this is a pre-planned operation of certain forces, then probably we will see further escalation. And when it comes to Trump, by the way, and his statements, he went to comment on talks with Iran that is taking place. And as I predicted, it seems like Washington is kind of ready to walk away from these talks, which can be seen as an indicator that maybe they think in the White House, in the Pentagon, CIA, and so on, that they are ready now, well enough positioned to attack Iran, because in my understanding, Washington was never honest actor in these negotiations with Tehran. But anyways, let's go through this news. The new round of talks between the United States and Iran will take place on June 12, although Washington is not yet satisfied by Tehran's response to the proposed nuclear deal. US President Donald Trump said, we have quote from him, We have a meeting with Iran on Thursday, so we are going to wait till Thursday, Trump said, answering to a reporter's question at the White House. They are just asking for things that you can't do. They don't want to give up what they have to give up. You know what that is. They seek enrichment. We can't have enrichment, Trump said. And so far, they are not there. Trump continues. I hate to say, because the alternative is a very, very dire one, but they are not there. They have given us their thoughts on a deal, and I said, it's just not acceptable. Trump added. So, I mean, everything in his statements, by the way, and everything else in regards to all this topic of Washington-Tehran talks was indicating to me personally that U.S. was not honest, U.S. leadership was not honest, and they were just gaining time to prepare as much as they can for assault on Iran, military assault on Iran. And seems like they are very close to walk away now and then state that they tried diplomatically, it didn't work. Now they have to resort to military means. That's what is going on here. Share your opinion, dear friends, what you think, but that's how I see this whole situation unveiling. And well, it is unfortunate. It is unfortunate because Iran definitely agreed on serious compromises. They said that they would not be against if Iran's nuclear program partially, for example, facilities that are engaged in enrichment of uranium to create fuel for nuclear reactors, if these facilities will become a part of regional consortium in which regional countries will also participate. Regional countries that want to, have nuclear power stations, want to have access to, nuclear fuel. And the Crown also said that IAEA, International Atomic Energy Agency, can constantly monitor the process. So Washington and every other side will always have a knowledge about levels of enrichment that are happening in these facilities. I mean, what else do you want? If Washington is honest in these negotiations and really wants to reach deal, then, I mean, this is great offer from Tehran, right? Through IAEA and through other countries, by the way, that may join this consortium, you will have exact knowledge of processes in these enrichment plants, right? And you will know if Iran is obeying its commitments not to enrich uranium over the necessary levels for nuclear reactors or not. But Washington seems like Washington is not interested. Not surprisingly to me, though. Right. So unfortunately, I think Middle East is very close to a regional war that it has never seen before. I'm afraid. Also, when it comes to Trump and his statements, by the way, I already shared. I have a video here of his statements. If you want to see this video, you can check my Telegram and Twitter X page, dear friends, and you can listen to statement of Trump. But these quotes on TASS was precise. That's exactly what he said in that video. TASS news agency, meanwhile, is reporting that Iran threatens Israel with retaliatory strikes on hidden Israeli nuclear sites, which is also important news, isn't it? So information obtained by Iran's special services from their archive of confidential documents allow the Islamic Republic to strike back at Israel's hidden nuclear infrastructure in the event of attack by the Jewish state. This is stated in a statement by the Iran's Supreme National Security Council. Excuse me. Today, the information obtained by Iran as a result of intelligence and operational activities carried out allows Iranian fighters to counter potential attack by Israel on the republic's nuclear infrastructure and repel any aggression from it by delivering a devastating blow to their hidden Israeli nuclear infrastructure. The statement cited by the IRIB television channel noted on June 7, Tasnim news agency, Iranian news agency, that is, I believe, reported that Iranian intelligence had obtained the archive of confidential documents related to Israel's nuclear program. The following day, Iranian intelligence minister Ismail Hatib said that Tehran would soon make their secret documents public. He called the archive a treasure trove that would enhance the Islamic Republic's offensive capabilities. So, well, strong words from Tehran, obviously, and if information about obtaining classified information about secret nuclear facilities of Israel is correct, then well, I guess that is additional reasoning for Israeli leadership to to act with restraint and not to go ahead with attacks on Iran's nuclear program, because well, Iran already proved that it has means to strike Israel, and if they know exactly where these secret nuclear facilities are, then they will strike those nuclear facilities as a retaliation. So this is a big warning from Iran to Israel, and let's hope sides somehow will manage to de-escalate. I'm not really optimistic on this regard. I think Israel, Zionists, neocons in US, and their controlled government there, and also globalists, by the way, on the same page when it comes to attack on Iran, for different reasons maybe, but on the same page. And therefore, most likely, at this point, regional war that will start with attack on Iran is almost inevitable. I don't want to say completely inevitable, but it seems like this regional war and an attack on Iran is almost inevitable. And in previous updates, dear friends, I explained many times my vision. Why would globalists want regional war in the Middle East? Why would Zionists want it? Why would US neocons and the controlled administration would want it? So I see no point to repeat myself now. RIA Novosti is meanwhile reporting that well, US has revealed what Saudi Arabia has planned, and this news is about so Saudi Arabia intends to enter a longer price war to restore its share of global oil market. Francisco Blanch, head of commodity research at the Bank of America Corp, said in an interview with the Bloomberg television, "This is not a price war that will be short-term and sharp. Rather, it will be long and gradual," Blanch argued. In his opinion, Saudi Arabia plans to take away market share from American shale oil as well as from OPEC Plus members. The expert claims that their kingdom strategy will be to stimulate an increase in oil production within OPEC Plus member states. Earlier, it was reported that 8 OPEC Plus countries with voluntary cuts will increase their oil production cap in July by another 411,000 barrels per day from their June level to the stable outlook for the global economy and their current healthy oil market, according to statements published by OPEC. And by the way, this news should be one that all the oil producer nations pay attention to, especially in US, because if Saudi Arabia and OPEC plus countries will start gradually increase oil output to bring down oil prices, and I'm not quite sure Saudi Arabia is financially ready for that. But if they will go ahead, in that case, well, US companies might lose market share very quickly because because oil that produced by US companies, especially fracking, through fracking, is extremely expensive, isn't it? It's extremely expensive. And therefore, US companies need their oil prices to be high. Otherwise, they wouldn't be able to compete, right? And they will just go bust. And I think that's, if this expert is correct, then that's maybe exactly what Saudi Arabia wants to achieve. But same time, Riyadh, by doing so, Riyadh will get engaged in an economical war with Washington. And are they really in that position? I don't know. They did not yet diversify their finances, right? Majority of money that Saudi Arabia has is in the West, based on information that is in open sources. And until this is the case, I don't think a royal family of Saudi Arabia gonna risk that much to go ahead and engaged in an energy war with US. OPEC plus countries may support Saudi Arabia until certain level, because obviously there is a level of oil prices beyond which countries will be hurt. Also, OPEC plus countries will also be hurt big time. Let's say beyond $30-40. I mean, lower than $30-40 is going to be quite a big hit on, I guess, majority of the OPEC plus countries. But if oil prices reach that level, US energy companies will go bust after one after another. Even before that, I don't think US energy companies can survive $50 for a barrel price. No. And they will require constant subsidies from the government. And that will cost US so much that maybe at one point Washington will say, you know what, just no, deal with it, right? Let's see. Interesting, by the way, interesting. Saudi Arabia, of course, together with a number of other countries, plays its own game and wants to stay on the top of the game or among the leaders on energy market. And therefore, I wouldn't be surprised at all if OPEC plus countries will go ahead with this attack on US energy companies. I don't know. A few more news, dear friends. RIA Novosti is reporting that West is preparing to lift their anti-Russian sanctions, according to Financial Times. Well, interesting news, but I don't know if we can trust on that Financial Times. We have a quote from an article. Commodity companies, insurance, and Western shipping groups are seeking legal advice on how to resume trade with Russia in preparations for the possible lifting of the US sanctions, the article said. As the publication noticed, a separate issue for companies remains the resumption of their activities on the Russian market, provided that EU and Great Britain do not support their easing of anti-Russian sanctions. The division between the US and Europe is currently a serious problem for business. Their publication quotes Sam Tate, global head of regulation and investigation at the law firm Clay & Co., as saying, after the start of special military operation, as we know, dear friends, collective US countries introduced tens of thousands of sanctions on Russia, and therefore very many Western companies were forced to flee Russian market and cut any ties with Russia, and they have significant losses because of it. U.S. companies alone lost over 300 billion, for example, right, and continue to lose billions and billions as time goes by. And I will not be surprised at all if some of them, at least, want to come back on the Russian market, want to resume cooperation with Russia. But it's not going to be easy, and I don't think we're going to see lifting of the anti-Russian sanctions anytime soon, really. So that's why I'm saying I don't know if we can trust this report from Financial Times. I don't think US or either US or the EU or any other country in the collective West, UK, Australia, New Zealand, and so on, gonna lift sanctions on Russia. I mean, why would they? I mean, globalists and neocons, they want further escalation with Russia. They don't want no de-escalation, right? So why would they allow their puppet regimes to lift any sanctions? It makes no sense, right? At this point, because yet again, globalists never ever demonstrated that they are a force for a peace. It's exactly the opposite. Anyways, when it comes to cooperation between Western and Russian businesses, between West and Russia, we have this report, which is also coming from Financial Times, that EU frozen out of Arctic opportunities by anti-Russian sanctions. So Western sanctions on Russia have effectively cut off EU shipping firms from tapping into Northern Sea route, NSR, their shortest maritime link between Europe and Asia Pacific. Their Financial Times has reported, citing industry sources. The route is expected to become a major trade entry for goods shipped between the continents and will drastically reduce transit times compared to shipping via Suez or the Panama channels. Western shipping companies are exercising caution to avoid any risks associated with their geopolitics, according to Daniel Richards, director at the London-based consultancy Maritime Strategies International. The cargo vessels that use the route are primarily operated by companies with close ties to Russia or China, according to Financial Times. And they mean this Northern Sea route, by the way, that Russia has opened, basically. The world's second largest container line, a Danish giant Maersk, abandoned use of the route and caused their cooperation with and ceased cooperation with Russia due to threats of running due to threats to anger Brussels, basically. The source told the newspaper that container ships in the Arctic rely on maritime hubs almost entirely within the Russian territorial waters and often require icebreakers provided by state corporation Rosatom, Russian state corporation. The journey from the Japanese port of Yokohama to Russian Arctic port Murmansk through their Northern Sea route is over 7,000 kilometers shorter than via Suez or Panama channels, which is a huge, by the way, isn't it? 7,000 kilometers is a huge distance. Moscow has dismissed the Western sanctions placed on it since the escalation of the Ukraine conflict as illegal and insisted that they have backwired on their countries that imposed them, which is also true, by the way. And well, European companies are feeling this true on their businesses, right? Because they are losing competitive advantages that might head to Chinese companies, for example, to Indian companies, to companies from other countries that are actually using Northern Sea route that Russia is offering, and therefore, they can sell goods, right, cheaper than European companies can, for example, or the US companies for that matter. Yet another demonstration that these anti-Russian sanctions actually backfired on the West and will continue to do so, because Northern Sea Route, no matter where collective West stands, Northern Sea Route is destined to become a major trade route for this planet in upcoming decades, by the way, especially as global warming continues, which has nothing to do with the human activity, by the way. Once again, it's just planetary processes that take place for hundreds of millions of years and then billions of years even, right? But well, now Earth is entering this global warming stage, after which they're gonna be, ice age again, right? And while it is a warming stage, uh, Northern Sea Route will definitely become more and more successful route, and at one point will become major trade route. That's it, man. It's just inevitable. It's just inevitable, and I think that is one of the reasons why forces that are behind the Trump in US, let's say America First forces, that's why they were thinking that they want also piece of cake when it comes to northern maritime routes, and that's why they were talking about Canada. That's why Trump was talking about Canada and Greenland, because they want to play big in Arctics, and they cannot now, really, because of the geography, and also because of the absence of ice-breaking fleet, which is still necessary, by the way, for now. In 20 years' time, maybe they would not be needed, right? Due to, yet again, global warming. But now icebreakers are needed. And which country has a biggest and most capable icebreaking fleet? It's Russia. And dear friends, I'm gonna end this live stream on this new segment of it, at least. Let's see if there was any super chatter. Once I will end new segment, my wife Anna will tell me if there was any super chat on Rumble, or any question through PayPal or Boosty. But news that I want to share with you now is that father of the US tech billionaire Elon Musk is in Moscow, by the way, participating in the forum 2050 Future Forum. That's the name of it. And well, he had the opportunity to, walk around Moscow, and he was quite impressed. He was quite impressed, I guess, because I'm going to give you some quotes from him. So, entrepreneur and Elon Musk's father, Errol Musk, who arrived in Moscow, admired the Russian capital. And then the quote here: the first thing I saw was absolutely beautiful civilization in every sense. I saw a city that could actually compete with the ancient Rome. In many ways, this city is the best capital in the world. I could not believe that this city is like Rome, but it is exactly so. The billionaire's father said at the 2050 Future Forum, and well, audience applauded this statement of his, understandably so, because who would not agree with father of the Musk that Moscow is definitely one of the best cities in the world for people, that is built for the people, by the way. When it comes to infrastructure, when it comes to greenery, parks, squares, and so on, definitely developed, very developed city in every possible sense. Wonderful city, and yes, I'm glad that father of Musk was that impressed. He was comparing Moscow with ancient Rome, which was definitely world's capital at the time, by the way, right? And well, if Elon Musk's father sees Moscow, modern Moscow, as ancient Rome, well, that's quite a quite a compliment, I will say, because yet again, ancient Rome, for its time, was definitely being seen like a number one city in the world. Period. Right. So yes, some good news, by the way. Let's end this update on this positive stuff. I live in Moscow, by the way. I can confirm that this city is absolutely wonderful, as many other cities are, by the way, here in Russia. I highly recommend to travel to Russia, to come to Moscow, Petersburg, Ekaterinburg, Kazan, Kaliningrad, Novgorod. I mean, you name it. Vladikavkaz, by the way. Capital of North Ossetia, Alania Autonomous Republic. I love that city, right? And you're gonna enjoy. Visiting Russia 100%, and gonna be absolutely positively impressed. And yes, let's end this news part of the live stream on that. Was there any super chat? Let me read it. Blorp, thank you very much for donation, and comment is from Blorp on the super chat on Rumble. Good morning, have a coffee. Thank you, and also super chat from Data Close. Thank you very much for your donation. Your work is very important and appreciated. Data Close is commenting. Thank you very much. I truly appreciate your kind words and support. And also, Alan Richard, thank you very much for your donation. Comment is thanks, Levan, peace, justice. Thank you very much. And I have to also acknowledge donation that this project received yesterday. Karen supported yesterday through PayPal, and comment was keep up the good work. Truly grateful. Thank you, all dear friends. You keep this project alive with your support. So truly appreciate, truly thankful. Thank you all for giving me this opportunity to stay and work in this field of news and political commentary. I will definitely try my best to be as informative as I possibly can. And dear friends, relatively long live stream today, but hopefully you will find it informative and useful. Thank you all for your attention, for your support. If you can, please like this video, leave some commentary in a comment section, and if you come across some short clips that I will make from this live stream, please, if you will have time, please just like those videos, and maybe you will leave commentary that might help to reach wider audience. And yes, this is it for now. Have a wonderful day, everybody, and take care.